Audi were going to build a 200 mile an hour twin turbocharged V12 diesel powered R8. Why didn't they? Well, that's what we're going to find out in this video. The Audi R8 launched in 2007 to much fanfare. Powered by a naturally aspirated 4.2 litre V8 engine, not only did it look great, but thanks to Quattro four-wheel drive, was playful yet balanced and was a supercar that could be driven daily. More practical than a Lamborghini and more seductive than a Porsche or BMW, it also proved that Audi could mix with what were traditionally classed as more sporty brands, and one outlet even claimed that the R8 was one of Audi's greatest creations. With all that being said, it's no surprise that there were hefty waiting lists for it when it launched. The late noughties were also a time where seemingly everything from race cars to your nan's hairdryer was powered by a diesel. It was also long before the emission scandal, with people blissfully lapping up cars such as the diesel TT, while at the same time Audi were out there proudly shouting about the sporty characteristics of their 6 and 8 cylinder 3 litre TDI and 4.2 litre TDI engines. The stage was set then for the brand that launched the first car with a TDI engine to the market in 1989 to, as they put it, write a new chapter in diesel technology. And sure enough, at the start of 2008, the R8 V12 TDI Concept was unveiled to the world at the Detroit Motor Show. Now, I deliberately mentioned diesel race cars a moment ago because the V12 TDI found in this new R8 was actually closely related to the one found in the Audi R10, which just so happened to be a 2-time Le Mans winner. While not quite as powerful as the 650 horsepower one found in the racer, the 6 litre twin turbocharged diesel V12 that they'd shoehorned into the R8 super sports car body was still an absolute beast. The headline figures are 500 horsepower, 738 pound-feet of torque, a top speed of around 200 miles an hour, and an MPG figure that could nudge 30. For reference, the V8 R8 has 430 horsepower and 317 pound-feet of torque, while the V10, which arrived in 2009, has 525 horsepower and 391 pound-feet of torque. So horsepower-wise, the diesel would have sat somewhere in the middle, but you don't need me to tell you that this car is all about the torque, and the V12's 1000 Newton meters is actually more than the V8 and V10 models' combined output. It's also about identical to the figure produced by the Porsche Taycan Turbo S. Now, admittedly, there was a slight compromise in that it weighed about 150 kilograms more than the V8 engine, but the increase in twisting power would have more than made up for that. In fact, to demonstrate the engine's torque, one reviewer was asked to accelerate from 30 miles an hour in 6th gear, and sure enough, they report that there was no judder or grumble from the drivetrain, and that they just experienced a smooth increase in speed. Also, despite having a 0 to 62 miles an hour time that might look a tad slow on paper compared to modern equivalents, with the torque accessible from as little as 1750 RPM, I think it is safe to say that the in-gear acceleration offered by the R8 TDI would have been like little else on the market. Except it would have been if all had gone to plan with the gearbox, but more on that later. Audi have probably put me on a hit list for mentioning that they ever liked diesels, so if you're enjoying this video, any likes and subscriptions would be much appreciated. Aside from the engine, the R8 V12 TDI Concept also gained new styling. Not only was this fitting of its new muscle mass, but it was also guided by aerodynamics, with the body actually generating some downforce. Obvious changes include a new continuous aluminium lip that connects the front and rear diffusers, a large side blades, and an extended rear spoiler. Talking of the rear, whilst we're around here, you may notice that the exhausts have been relocated. This was done to make way for the rear diffuser, as the R8 TDI has a completely flat floor because, as I said, this car and its styling was guided by aerodynamics. Moving up from there, you can see a few bits worth mentioning. First up, that great big hole is a NACA duct. This is functional and it draws air down into the 2-cylinder banks of the V12 TDI engine below, which alongside the enlarged air vents was a requirement to keep that big old engine cool. The engine, by the way, is on full display courtesy of a redesigned glass lid and can even be seen at night as the engine compartment on this car is lit. Audi described this feature as being like a work of art inside a large showcase. A little bit poncy, but I can see what they mean. Finally, on the exterior, you may have noticed that this car has a glass roof, and that gives us a good view of the interior. What a segue, if I do say so myself. Now, I'm not going to linger in here for too long because there isn't much to report. When compared to the production R8, the V12 TDI's interior featured a lot more aluminium. On the steering wheel, there is also a start-stop button, which looks like it then made its way into the second generation of R8, when here it doubles as a drive select switch, letting the driver choose between dynamic, sport or race modes. Now, in race mode, you'll be glad to learn that the instrument lighting turns from white to red. Very cool, and that the nav screen can show information such as lap timers, boost pressure and centrifugal force. It's bonus fact time. The red and silver car that you have seen pictured throughout this video are actually the same car. Only one prototype was ever made, it's just that Audi decided to repaint it after the Detroit Motor Show. Right then, Audi had the car and the engine, and according to Autocar were convinced that the time of the mid-engined V12 diesel-powered Quattro-driven sports car had come. So, why didn't they put it into production? Well, despite looking all finished and shiny, there was actually a bit of an issue with the concept. You see, the R8 had never actually been built to handle such a long engine, and essentially the V12 didn't fit. This meant that not only did it eat into some of the interior space, which was apparently not much of an issue, but more notably it was fitted with an Audi A4 transmission, as it was the only one that the engineers could find that would fit. Now, you won't be surprised to hear that this transmission wasn't designed to handle 1000 Nm of torque, and indeed it wasn't, and as a result of this the prototype was actually limited to half of its claimed torque figure. Regardless, it was still producing more torque than the V8 R8, and it still went on to impress journalists, with one even suggesting that AMG Mercedes drivers may be tempted into an R8 TDI. Also, despite diesels being famed for sometimes being a little bit agricultural, a lot of reviews I found actually commented on how smooth and quiet this concept car was. And one claim that I found that seems to nicely round up the reviews of the TDI R8 was that the road car will be quicker than, and yet almost wholly unlike any sports car you've ever driven. But what about the gearbox-shaped elephant in the room? Well, despite originally being planned to feature a gated 6-speed manual gearbox, at the time of the first drives it was also reported that the car would finally make production in 2010 with a new 7-speed DSG gearbox. Except it didn't. Ultimately, Audi decided that the cost of re-engineering the R8 to accommodate the massive twin-turbocharged V12 and the suitable gearbox was simply too great, and that they would be unable to recoup their investment through sales alone. With an estimated price of at least £100,000 compared to the V8 starting price of only £77,000, Audi were also concerned that the V12 TDI would have just been too expensive for what ultimately would have been a niche model. So ultimately it was a bit of a pipe dream, although to call it that does seem a little bit harsh, as Audi did give building the concept a good go, and that concept did impress the media and the punters at the time. Although I guess the cynic in me does wonder whether the latter was the plan all along. Fortunately though, that V12 engine did live on as a non-dry sumped version powered the infamous V12 TDI Q7. And with that, this quick history lesson on the diesel supercar that nearly was is over. It was an interesting idea and it certainly would have been a unique piece of automotive history, but unfortunately, as is often the way, the accountants got in the way in the end. I've been Blee, I hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you have, remember to like, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.